The sun was melting into the Miami horizon, painting the water in golds and tangerines. Our yacht gleamed under the soft evening light, anchored just far enough from the shore to feel like a private world. 30 guests, dressed to the nines, sipped champagne, laughed in clusters, the clink of glass against glass marking the rhythm of our little celebration. On the surface, it was perfect. I stood near the bar, nodding, smiling, letting the warmth of the evening wrap around me like a silk shawl. It was supposed to be a celebration of love, success, and everything we had built, or so I thought. He stood center stage, as always. My husband, charming, confident, the kind of man who never needed to raise his voice to control a room. His hand on my lower back as we mingled felt less like affection, more like placement. As though I was a detail in his set. Every so often, he'd interrupt me mid-sentence, pivot a conversation to his advantage. No one noticed. Or maybe they did, and chose to ignore it. Family, friends, business partners, and a few faces I didn't recognize filled the deck. Laughter, handshakes, air kisses. The kind of party where everyone knew they were part of something. Or wanted to be. I kept thinking, this night is going to change everything. I was right, just not the way I imagined. He tapped his glass with the back of his ring. That sharp ting quieted the crowd instantly. Everyone, he said, voice smooth as always, thank you for joining us tonight. It means the world to celebrate, well, everything. People leaned in, smiles widened. I stood a few steps behind him, sipping champagne, eyes scanning the sea. At the center of it all, he continued, is the woman who keeps me sane, sometimes. My wife. Laughter. She came into my life with big dreams. And no idea how taxes worked. More laughter, tighter this time. I mean, she once thought equity was a yoga position. The chuckles turned nervous. I froze. But in all seriousness, he said, smirking in my direction, she always wanted to be someone. Now she's just the lady on my yacht. The laughter that followed wasn't loud. It was sharp. A few guests shifted in their seats. I held my smile, a tight, practiced thing. My heart thundered behind my ribs. This wasn't a joke. It was a message. And everyone heard it. Outside, the party carried on, laughter, music, refills of rose and bourbon. Inside, something in me curled inward. My cheeks burned. I clenched my fists under the tablecloth, hiding the storm inside. I was 11 again, at my aunt's house, being laughed at for mispronouncing croissant. That same tightness in my chest, the same forced chuckle. A cycle, now with better lighting and more expensive wine. Across the table, a woman, older, with silver hair and a sharp stare, didn't laugh. Our eyes met. She didn't smile. And in that silent exchange, I felt seen. I scanned the deck. No exit felt right. So I stood, whispered something about needing air, and made my way up to the upper deck. There, away from the music, I let the wind slap my face. I blinked against the sting in my eyes. Not tears. I wouldn't give him that. He found me minutes later, hands in his pockets, that grin still hanging on his face. You took that personal? He asked, eyebrows raised. I turned slowly. What the hell was that? It was a joke, he said, shrugging. Lighten up, babe. People loved it. Did they? My voice was low. Controlled. Because I didn't. He leaned against the railing. Look, you know how these things work. I give them a little charm, they laugh, we keep the deals warm. And I'm the punchline now? You're reading too much into it. No, I said. You're underestimating how much I've been reading for a while. He straightened, annoyed now. Don't forget who made all this possible. And don't forget who was there before the first deal, before the first dollar. His jaw tightened. No words. Just a scoff. Then he turned and walked back downstairs, leaving the door to the upper lounge open behind him. That's when I made the vow. Quiet. Solid. You want a show? I'll give you a show. I smoothed my dress, took a deep breath, and walked back down like nothing had happened. The music had shifted, something slower now. Faces turned as I picked up my flute of champagne. I raised it high, voice steady. To clarity, I said. Sometimes it comes dressed as humiliation. There was a pause. A puzzled look here. A forced chuckle there. But his face. His jaw was tight. Eyes narrow. He knew. And in that moment, I knew something too. The woman who'd stepped onto that yacht was gone. The sea was calm. Too calm. Morning light spilled across the deck, dancing off the water like nothing had happened the night before. But I knew better. The same yacht that held 30 people laughing, toasting, pretending, it felt like a ghost now. A hollow shell echoing with the aftertaste of too much champagne and not enough truth. I woke alone. Not metaphorically, literally. The bed was empty. He'd slept in another cabin. Or maybe he never came to bed at all. I couldn't be sure. The sheets on my side were wrinkled, his, untouched. Silence greeted me louder than any insult he had thrown the night before. The kind of quiet that presses on your chest and makes you second-guess your sanity. I sat up slowly, the ache behind my eyes reminding me I hadn't cried, I had swallowed it all whole. The party was over. Champagne flutes with smudged lipstick lined the railing. A shattered glass near the corner. Cigarette butts in a crystal dish that wasn't supposed to be there. I could still hear it, his voice, the way he laughed after saying it. And worse, the way others followed. Humiliation doesn't end when laughter fades, I whispered to no one. It echoes in silence. A ping from my phone snapped the thought. I picked it up, screen blinking. A photo. Me, mid-laugh, or trying to. My face frozen in a smile, his hand gesturing like he owned the punchline. The caption wasn't included, but it didn't need to be. The image said it all. More texts followed. Some pretending to care. Others thinly veiled curiosity. You okay? One read. That video's everywhere. Video? I clicked another message, then another. Someone had live-streamed the toast. The whole thing. From his first funny line to the moment my eyes glazed over. It wasn't just public. It was entertainment now. He strolled in, bare-chested, sunglasses in hand, whistling. You're trending, babe, he said, grinning. People love a little drama. I stared at him. That's what this is to you. Lighten up. It's not that serious. It is to me. You care too much what people think. That's your problem. Always has been. I looked down at my phone again, then back up. And you think people respect you after that? They respect power. Image. Money. The rest is noise. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said quietly, one day, you'll learn what real power looks like. He didn't flinch. Just grabbed his coffee and walked out. Like the conversation was over. Like I didn't matter. But something inside me shifted. The calls stopped coming. The messages slowed. The people who always had something to say had suddenly forgotten how to use their phones. Not even a "how are you" from those who used to beg for lunch dates. Even some of our business ties grew cold. Meetings postponed. Emails ignored. I wasn't surprised. People don't choose sides out of loyalty. They choose the side that still shines. My mother once told me, silence can protect you, but it can also bury you. I used to think she meant be careful who you trust. Now I understood she meant be careful who you let silence you. I opened my journal. First time in months. The pages smelled like dust and old perfume. I didn't write poetry. I wrote facts. Dates. Names. Patterns I'd noticed. Movements in his company accounts. Questions I used to ignore. I started watching. Listening. Quietly. By evening, I sat alone on the rear deck, hair tied back, notebook by my side. One of the crew approached, quietly, cautiously. "Ma'am," he said, voice low, "this was found after the cleanup." Looked personal. An envelope. Unmarked. I opened it slowly. Inside, a printout of an email. A receipt. A wire transfer. Property title. All linked to the yacht. And my name buried in the transaction trail. My inheritance. The money he swore was set aside. Used under his company's name. My chest tightened, then steadied. This wasn't just about jokes or bruised pride. He stole from me. He humiliated me to keep me small. To distract me while he pocketed my trust. I folded the paper slowly, slid it back into the envelope. He mocked me for being naive. But he forgot, I keep receipts. I stood, walked to the bathroom, washed my face. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look stronger. But I felt it. "You laughed first," I said to my reflection. "But I'll have the last word." The wind off the boardwalk carried salt and silence. I walked slower than usual, letting the ocean air cut through the thick cloud in my chest. My feet moved out of habit, not direction. I wasn't ready to return to that apartment. But eventually, I did. Our penthouse, he liked to call it ours, looked more like a museum than a home. Perfectly lit, curated, soulless. The kind of place people whispered about at parties but never really lived in. I slipped off my shoes by the door. The maid must have been cleaning earlier, the faint scent of polish still hung in the air. I wandered into his study, more to breathe than snoop. Then I saw it, one drawer left slightly open. A stack of papers peeked out, unassuming. I hesitated, then pulled it. Receipts. Transactions. A shell company I didn't recognize. But I knew the names on the accounts. My father's trust. The same account I was told had been reinvested wisely for our future. And there it was. My name, crossed out. His, added. I didn't need a confrontation. The paper screamed loud enough. Some betrayals don't need yelling. They live in silence. In signatures you never gave and promises no one intended to keep. At dinner that night, the air was still. He scrolled his phone, barely glancing up as I placed his plate down. "I was looking for a pen in your study," I started. "Found something odd." He didn't flinch. "You're tired. You always get like this when you're overwhelmed." Gaslight. Strike one. I tried again. It was a receipt. Under a name I didn't recognize. But it was our money. He leaned back, fork in hand. Honey, we've talked about this. You get these ideas. You mix things up. That's why I handle the numbers. Gaslight. Strike two. It wasn't the first time. A party 2 years ago, I misremembered a detail in a story, and he corrected me, publicly. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But I didn't forget. I finished my meal in silence. Then I started writing. Not a diary. A ledger. Notes. Dates. Who said what, when? I didn't trust my memory anymore. But I trusted the facts. When someone tries to rewrite your past, you take the ink back. Later that week, I met up with Madison. Old friend. Older soul. She hugged me like she still knew who I was before I got smaller. We sat at an outdoor cafe. I didn't give her everything. Just hypotheticals. If someone forged a signature, I asked, on shared assets. What would happen? She didn't blink. Just sipped her tea. You gather proof. Quietly. Women don't lose wars, we just take longer to win them. Her words stayed with me long after we hugged goodbye. That night, I started watching him. Not obvious, just small things. How his tone dropped when he answered certain calls. The names he mentioned. The ones he didn't. One evening, through a slightly ajar door, I heard him. Yeah, transfer it all. She suspects nothing. The words landed like a slap. But I didn't react. I hit record instead. It wasn't just about embarrassment anymore. It was theft. Deliberate. Planned. The next morning, I called a financial advisor. Used my maiden name. Ran a check on all trusts associated with my family. The results hit hard. I had been a co-owner on multiple assets until digital signatures, supposedly mine, removed me. He forged them. Systematically. With confidence. That quiet fury didn't break me. It focused me. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming what had been taken. Piece by piece. I started backing everything up, cloud, USB, locked drawer. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. He taught me strategy by playing dirty. Now I'd play clean and smarter. Later that night, while rearranging old books in the den, something I hadn't touched in months, a photo slipped from the pages. Me, age 10, on a small fishing boat with my father. His arm around me, sun in our eyes, peace on our faces. I picked it up gently. Then the phone buzzed. New audio file saved. I pressed play. His voice, transfer it all. She suspects nothing. I looked down at the photo again. My father once told me, if someone's stealing from you, don't stop them mid-theft. Let them finish. Then take back double. This wouldn't be a conversation. It would be an exorcism. The road to Charleston felt longer than it used to. Maybe it was the weight of what I knew, or what I was about to face. By the time I turned into the family estate, dusk had already fallen, and the house glowed like a lantern in the dark. Every window lit, every light too bright. It didn't feel welcoming. It felt exposed. This house used to be laughter, piano keys, late dinners that stretched past midnight. Now, it was a stage. My father built it brick by brick, my husband turned it into a showroom. His trophies lined the hallway, his framed articles filled the walls. But not one picture of me. Not one. I paused at the front door, hand on the brass handle. Respect isn't given, I whispered to myself. It's noticed. The air inside was heavy with cedar polish and faint perfume, like the house itself was pretending. I walked into the study, the same room where my father taught me to sign my name for the first time. A memory flashed, his hand over mine, steadying my pen. I blinked, and the illusion was gone. His desk now belonged to someone else. Papers were stacked neatly, folders labeled with a precision that didn't match his old habits. And then I saw it, an envelope sitting dead center, already addressed to me. My name, in his handwriting. But the seal hadn't been touched. I opened it carefully. Inside was a stack of printed emails and contract drafts. Words that burned more than any insult could. My name had been removed from the company's legacy project, the one I helped build, the one meant to carry my father's name forward. A new contract showed it now belonged entirely to my husband's firm. My pulse quickened. This was never an accident. I remembered my 30th birthday, when he'd brushed off a family discussion about the company. You'll learn later, he'd said, smiling. I thought it was patience. It was dismissal. I ran my hand down the paper, feeling every indentation of betrayal. This wasn't oversight. It was erasure. I pulled out my phone, photographed every page, then opened my voice recorder. My own voice sounded strange, low, measured. He took it. Everything tied to my name. He didn't just steal money. He stole legacy. You can steal an idea, but not the memory of creating it. Dinner that night was staged like every other evening, crystal glasses, silverware aligned, candles glowing. The kind of picture that would make strangers think, what a beautiful life they have. He sat at the head of the table, scrolling through his phone. I waited until the first course was cleared. My tone was even, controlled. I found the documents, I said. We need to talk. He looked up, half a smile tugging at his mouth. Did you find your missing title? He joked. A few of the guests chuckled, unsure whether they should. This isn't funny, I replied. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. That agreement has both our signatures. You know exactly what I'm talking about. He froze for a fraction of a second. A guest cleared their throat. The sound of the air conditioner filled the silence. When they treat your existence as a joke, I thought, prove you're the punchline no longer. I set down my napkin, pushed the chair back, and looked directly at him. Tomorrow, I meet with a lawyer. His fork clattered against the plate. He stood so quickly his chair fell backward. But instead of speaking, he just stared at me, eyes darting, calculating. I held his gaze. He didn't move. After dinner, I went upstairs to my old room, the one I hadn't entered in years. I found my journal tucked under a loose floorboard. The leather was worn, pages half filled with the kind of thoughts you write when you still believe people mean what they say. I wrote a single line, no more shadows. I cast my own light. Then I opened my laptop. Emailed Madison to schedule a meeting. Texted Talone, the financial advisor, to confirm a referral. One by one, the moves fell into place. I spread the documents across the desk, trust fund, yacht registration, company shares. My name should have been everywhere. It wasn't. My mother's voice echoed from somewhere deep in memory, when they erase your name, write yourself back into history. So I did. I sent a quiet, precise email to the trust's board requesting an independent audit. No anger. Just action. When I closed the laptop, the estate went dark. All but one light, his office, still flickering downstairs. I walked out to the veranda. The night air was cool, and the harbor stretched ahead, black and endless. In the distance, the yacht shimmered under soft lights like a prize on display. Tomorrow, I thought, the tide turns. The cafe was almost empty when Madison slid into the booth across from me. She always looked like calm personified, neat hair, neutral tones, eyes that missed nothing. The kind of woman who could turn a legal threat into a polite conversation. She set a leather folder on the table. "You've been busy," she said quietly. I passed her my phone, photos of forged signatures, the audio recordings, the contracts I'd printed, each one more incriminating than the last. She studied them in silence, her brow tightening the further she read. When she finally looked up, her voice was low. "You're on solid ground. But the bigger the money, the messier the resistance." I stirred my coffee, the spoon clinking against the porcelain. The sound steadied me somehow. We talked logistics, timelines, filings, subpoenas, the slow machinery of justice. Every word felt like a gear shifting inside me. A part of me was terrified. Another part felt alive for the first time in months. "This isn't just a marriage anymore," I said. "It's a boardroom war." Madison's lips curved, not in amusement, but understanding. "Then don't just react," she said. "Make him reveal himself." I nodded. The line between fear and resolve blurred, and somewhere in that mix, strength took shape. When I left the cafe, the sun was setting over the Charleston rooftops. The air smelled of sea salt and espresso. I took a deep breath and crossed the street, feeling like I'd stepped onto a different version of my own life. At home, the lights were on. He was in the kitchen, pouring wine like nothing in the world had shifted. He looked up, surprised. "You're home early," he said, casual, too casual. I set my bag on the counter. "We need to talk. About the yacht. The trust. And those fake signatures." For a split second, his smile faltered. Then it came back, polished, practiced. "You've been reading too much again," he said lightly. "I've retained legal counsel," I said, my tone calm, deliberate. "Everything's documented. So, if you're going to lie, think carefully before you do." That got him. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing just enough to show the man behind the mask. "You want to play this game?" he said quietly, setting down the glass. "You'll lose more than a yacht." I didn't blink. "I already lost your respect," I said. "There's nothing more to lose." He stared at me for a long moment, as if waiting for me to flinch. But I didn't. For the first time, I realized the silence between us wasn't fear anymore, it was power. Later that night, my phone rang. His sister's name flashed on the screen. I considered ignoring it, then answered. "Why are you causing problems?" she said, skipping any greeting. "He's under so much stress." I smiled to myself. "Is that what he told you?" She hesitated. "You know how he is when he's pushed. Just don't make things worse." I could hear it, his version of the story already spreading. I was the unstable wife, the one stirring chaos. It was easier to paint me as emotional than admit he was deceitful. "If he's nervous," I said evenly, "he should be. And maybe you should ask him why." She went quiet. The kind of silence that says, "I know, but I can't say it." When a woman speaks the truth, I told her, people call her difficult. But silence never saved anyone. I hung up before she could reply. That night, sleep was impossible. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, surrounded by old journals. The ones I kept from the early years, pages full of dinners, trips, laughter, promises that felt real. I read until the words blurred. Somewhere in those pages, I found a version of me that still believed love was enough. I almost texted him. I even typed the words, "Can we talk? Maybe fix this quietly." But then I looked at the note I'd written in my new journal earlier. He taught me strategy by playing dirty. I deleted the message. No, halfway, I whispered. Not for someone who already crossed the line. The morning came gray and heavy. The mail was waiting on the front step, a single envelope with no return address. Inside were photos, me and Madison at the cafe, her leaning in, me holding papers. And a note, typed in bold letters. Keep digging, and you'll bury yourself. I stared at it, my hands cold. He wasn't defending his money anymore. He was playing for blood. I spent the entire afternoon under a still cloud of dread. The note and photos from last night circled in my thoughts like vultures waiting. I didn't call Madison. I didn't write her another email yet. I kept it quiet, locked inside on purpose. The solitude felt unfamiliar but necessary. I walked through the house slowly, his side of the bed made up, the fridge stocked full of foods he liked but I rarely touched. Every detail kicked me in the gut. My reflection stared back at me in the hallway mirror and I realized, I'm not living with a husband. I'm living beside a plan. I took the drive to the yacht club that evening with my seatbelt tight, steering steady. He'd invited me to a dinner event there, a social reaffirmation, I suspected. I went not to play his game but to watch him think he still owned it. The private club, windows twinkling, boats rocking gently outside. He stood in the middle of the room greeting people, patting backs, praising me in front of everyone. She's been so gracious staying out of any trouble. The laughter was muted, the looks thinly veiled. I answered with just enough grace to unsettle him. I heard him slip over to a board member and murmur something about dissolving our joint holdings. I held his gaze until he looked away. Later, in the empty parking lot, I approached him. The street lamp above flickered. I said, if you're trying to erase me, at least be honest about it. He stepped toward me, grip firm on my wrist. You'll end up with nothing, he said with cold certainty. I withdrew my arm, steady, nearly smiling. Then I'll rebuild with integrity, something you never had. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. Not this time. I handed over a flash drive with encrypted files to Madison that night, our evidence, our foundation. He touched my wrist and in that moment I buried what little trust remained. The camera above the club entrance captured every second. His move. My response. The fear on his face when I didn't yield. When I locked my phone, logged in, and watched the file transfer complete. The screenshot confirmed everything. Silence had been my refuge. Tonight, silence became my weapon. The call came just after midnight. I hadn't even turned off the hallway lamp yet. Talon Graves. I hadn't heard his voice in nearly 2 years, but it sounded just the same, measured, firm, and low. We found the missing link, he said. That's all he gave me over the phone. An hour later, I stepped into the dim war room at his private office building downtown. Screens lined the walls, charts, email chains, bank trails that snaked across names I knew too well. Talon stood beside one, arms folded, his sharp gaze not softened by the years. They tried to pull the same move on me last quarter, he began. I stepped back. Watched the patterns. Your name came up on the second shell transfer. He tapped a monitor showing hidden assets, properties, accounts, off-books investments tied to the trust but quietly siphoned out. My breath caught. Then steadied. I thought you left the game, I said quietly. I don't play it the same way anymore, he replied. But I don't walk away from students who fight smart. I nodded once. The tide had turned. Not because someone saved me, but because someone showed up when I was already standing. What's the move? I asked. Talon looked me straight in the eye. We expose them. Tomorrow. When morning came, I didn't dress for a fight. I dressed for clarity. Simple. Clean lines. Not a hair out of place. I arrived early at the boardroom. Smiled at the assistants, sipped black coffee. Let them think whatever they wanted. He walked in late, flanked by his legal aide, carrying the new charter. A plan to redistribute company oversight under the guise of simplification. They'd rehearsed applause. Expected nods. I listened. Then I stood. I've reviewed the charter, I said, tone even. But it contradicts the ownership agreement in the Dunmore Trust. I've requested an independent audit. Murmurs broke across the room. He tilted his head, lips tight, trying not to show it. And just so we're clear, I continued, locking eyes with him, the yacht, the shares, the Charleston estate, they were all tied to my signature. A signature you scrubbed. Silence. Not stunned, calculating. I could see the shift behind the eyes of those who mattered. A few board members leaned forward. A few avoided my gaze. But the seed was planted. Outside, it was overcast. But inside me, light had shifted. Back at the estate that evening, the celebration dinner was already staged. His family had dressed it up as a toast to unity, to calm things down, paint me back into the quiet background. Callista raised her glass first. To tradition and family legacy. I didn't wait long. I rose with my glass, chin lifted. To tradition we respect, I said evenly, and truth we can't ignore. The air went tight. I glanced around. His father looked down. Callista blinked. I took one slow sip. The real legacy of this family, I said to the room, is not the yacht. Not the stocks. It's the trust we keep. And I have documents. Then I sat down. The fork in his hand never touched the plate after that. I excused myself early. Walked the long hallway to my father's old study. The room hadn't changed. Still smelled like pine and ink and paper memories. I sat behind the desk. Pulled out the photo, me and him on that tiny boat off Hilton Head. I remembered his voice, never wait for the storm to pass. Steer into it. The echo pin sat beside the frame, dull silver. I edited the final version of the evidence package. Encrypted it. Scheduled the public release for sunrise. One last message to Talon, lights on. I left the study in silence. Left the photo and pin behind. I had no need to carry proof anymore. I was becoming it. As I turned off the last hallway light, my phone buzzed once. Unknown number. Your move triggered theirs. They're coming for you. I didn't blink. I stepped onto the terrace, wind tugging my hair, eyes on the harbor. The horizon was pale pink, bleeding into blue. The sun would rise soon. The boardroom would be full. And I would walk in, but this time on my own terms. I walked into the boardroom like I owned the air in it. No nerves, no second guessing. Just the sound of my heels against polished wood and the weight of something unshakable in my chest. A navy suit, clean, sharp, nothing extravagant. Hair tied back. Face calm. They were already there. The board. A few photographers. Seraphine sitting at the far end like this was just another routine meeting. He looked relaxed. He always did when he thought he had control. I knew that face. I used to believe in it. But not today. He smirked, subtly, when I sat down. As if to say, showtime. So I did. Good morning, I said, voice even. Let's begin with the agenda you didn't prepare for. I saw his eyes narrow. Pinned on my lapel, the old shell-shaped pin shimmered under the downlight. It wasn't just a memory anymore. It was armor. I opened my folder and slid copies across the table. Trust documents. Forensic reports. Screenshots. Signatures, mine, altered. The weekend parking lot video, his hand on my wrist, his words crystal clear. At first, just paper shuffling. Then silence. The kind that happens when power realizes it's being hunted. The lawyer's face lost all color. Board members glanced at each other. Some leaned back, others leaned in. I looked around once, steady. Integrity isn't a privilege of the powerful, I said, it's the only currency that outlasts them. I turned to Seraphine. The yacht. The estate. The stocks. All tied to a trust you tampered with. The original documents are intact. I'm suggesting we vote. On audit. On reinstatement. And on oversight. He stood. Voice low and fast, you'll bankrupt us if you do this. I looked at him one last time, not the man I married. Just the one I outgrew. No, I replied, I'll bankrupt the lie. The vote begins tomorrow. The boardroom wasn't tense anymore. It was shifting. Madison stood at the back. Talon beside her. A nod from both. Quiet, but clear. Then the second wave began. The live stream clicked on. A link leaked by a board member, one I hadn't expected but wasn't surprised by. The comments began almost instantly. She did it. She's been the real one all along. She's not a victim. She's the plan. I didn't flinch. Let them see everything. Seraphine's jaw tightened. He looked around, saw the cameras, realized it wasn't private anymore. This isn't just about assets, I said, turning back to the table. This is for anyone who's ever been called invisible while building everything from behind the curtain. Someone across the room whispered, she's always been the owner. I finished the meeting on my feet. Next week, we vote. I'll be here. And then I left. The docks were quiet by late afternoon. I walked the length of the marina, past the yachts. Past his. Mine, technically, now under freeze. 3,000 people had tuned into a moment that started with 30 laughing at me on a yacht. The full circle hit different when the world was watching. I stopped at the end of the dock, pulled out a folder. Inside, one signed document naming me the guardian of the Dunmore Trust. Another, transferring the yacht into a foundation that offered marine therapy for veterans. And one email. Simple. I resign as silent partner. Sent to Seraphine. the reply would never matter. By evening, the legal team confirmed asset lock. Shares restructured. The board had already begun calling a second meeting. I stood there for a moment longer, looking out at the yacht. For the first time, its mast lights were off. Not broken. Just off. Peace isn't loud. And it isn't pretty. It's quiet. It's earned. I walked back up the pier. No audience now. Just wind and salt and breath. At the edge of the path, I stopped. Slid the echo pin between my fingers. Let it press into my palm. My phone buzzed. A text. They're reconnecting. What's your next move? No name. No need. I didn't answer. I looked out into the dark, steady tide, letting the silence fill me one more time. I came back to the harbor right before sunset. No one called me. No one expected me. And for the first time in a long time, that felt right. The yacht sat quiet in the water. Same boat, different weight. I stepped aboard, not to reclaim anything, not to fight, but just to stand still and breathe. The light was golden, soft. The sky wide open. This was where it started. Where the mask cracked. Where their laughter echoed louder than my voice. But now. It was just wood, steel, water. This vessel once held my humiliation, I whispered, fingers trailing along the railing. Now, it's just a boat. I went below deck and opened one final drawer. A silk scarf I hadn't worn since that night. A photo, me and my niece, years back, before the money, before the war. I folded the scarf. Tucked the photo in my coat. No rush. No eyes watching. No one to impress. Just silence. I called the marina office. Yes, this is Mrs. Dunham. Yes, the vessel's mine. I'm donating it to the Veteran Sailing Program. Rename it if you like. No. I won't be needing a receipt. I left the keys in the bowl by the door. And walked away. At the house, the new one I picked myself, small, coastal, not a single chandelier, the porch light was already on. Madison was first to arrive. Then Talone. Then my niece with a bottle of wine she couldn't pronounce. A few women from the support group drifted in, familiar faces now. No one overdressed. No makeup masks. We sat by the fire, real logs crackling, and passed plates of carrot cake, not some overdone tiramisu no one touched. We didn't toast. We talked. I heard you gave the yacht away, someone said gently. I nodded. Power kept is still a chain, I replied. Power let go becomes freedom. We fell into stories, not victories, not war stories, just the real kind. The kind that sit in your bones. The kind that don't need applause. And then quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask for anything. That night, I slept. No pacing. No staring at the ceiling. Just sleep, full, deep, earned. A week later, a letter arrived. His handwriting. Neat. Formal. Cowardly. He wrote that he hoped for peace and that perhaps someday I'd understand. I tore it once. Then again. And fed the pieces into the fireplace without a word. Understanding isn't owed, I thought. Closure isn't granted. It's chosen. At the dining table that night, I opened my laptop. Created a new account. Harbor Grace Foundation. Non-profit. Legal aid. For women no one listened to until it was too late. I typed bylaws, adjusted templates. I brewed tea. I worked without checking the time. This was the empire I believed in. No flashing lights. No board votes. Just change. The yacht? Just a step. The headlines? Just echoes. What they tried to use to shrink me ended up being the bones of my new foundation. Before sunrise, I made my way down the path toward the pier again. This time, no reason but peace. The tide was low. A small paper boat bobbed beside a piling, folded by some child or stranger. On it, in smeared black ink, one word. Free. I smiled. Not everything needs to be remembered to be honored. I reached into my coat and unpinned the shell from my lapel. The one my father gave me. The one I clung to when everything else crumbled. I kissed it once. Then dropped it into the water. Didn't look back. I was never theirs to sink, I said, soft enough for only me to hear. No applause. No finish line. Just the absence of pain. As I stood there, a pelican flew past, silent, low, steady. Then my phone buzzed. Message preview lit the screen. Mrs. Dunham, we've reviewed your foundation. Would you consider joining the National Reform Council as a speaker? I took one long breath. Let the morning settle into me. The door behind me was closed. But somewhere a gate just opened.